Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
I will be right back. For some reason, my meat is acting up and you're all just bars across the middle.
All right.
I might try switching devices. Hey, guys. So if I go out and come back in again, that's why.
I didn't hear what you said, Megan. Did you say you were going to turn off your mic?
Oh, hi. No, yeah, sorry. No, my kids are like all over me, so I'm going to keep my camera off for sure because it's like chaos here. But I might try to switch to a different device quick. So if I leave, I'll be back in like a second. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, hello. It's 5:30, so let's get started. So I'll call the Ad Hoc Breaking Barriers Committee meeting to order. Michelle, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Getting my list quick.
Oh, sure.
Miller.
Present.
Okay, go ahead.
So, sorry, present.
That's okay. Delgado.
Here.
Basco.
Here.
Barajas Vela. Morones. Morales. Zuniga. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's here. She's just on mute, it looks like.
Yeah. Okay. Lore. Kristen Lore. Wendy Sanchez. Ramirez Carrera. Duran.
Here.
Acevedo.
Here.
Hendrick.
Here.
Galindo.
Here.
And Pena. Okay. Doesn't look like she's here either. So it looks like we have 9 people present. 8 people present on the committee. Oh, Kristen just popped in, it looks like. We just finished roll call. Kristen, can you hear me?
Oh, yep. Hello.
Hi. Okay, well, Kristen is here.
All right. May I please have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
This is Kristen. I second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. The next item is, oh, I'm looking at the wrong, I'm sorry. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes from November 2nd, 2020?
So move.
And a second, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Excuse me, I just need to clarify, the motion was by Handrick, but I didn't hear who seconded.
Bosco.
Thank you.
Oh, I just lost an earring. Okay. So the next, then I think we just move into the business action items. Is that right, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right. So the first thing was to discuss the mission statement that we came up with last time. And I have that ready for us if you'd like me to read it again. And the vision that was proposed at that earlier meeting. So let me just bring that up so we have that. But the first thing is just to clarify what exactly our mission is. And so I'll read it. It is, we had said, removing language and cultural barriers to the engagement of parents and guardians of students with the goal of supporting student achievement and wellness. So again, we had said removing language and cultural barriers to the engagement of parents and guardians of students with the goals of supporting student achievement and wellness. So that's kind of our starting point as far as we got last time, and we can, discuss whether we want to add to that or shift words around. Would it help to see if I shared my screen and you could see that, or?
Yes, please.
What's that?
If you can share your screen, that would be great.
Okay. All right. Let me do that. All right, so can you see here, right up here, discussion and approval, and here it is, removing language and cultural barriers to the engagement of parents and guardians of students with the goal of supporting student achievement and wellness.
I'm like little stuck on like it just doesn't seem to make sense, removing language and cultural barriers to the engagement of parents and guardians.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, one thing, we could switch language to linguistic. That would be, linguistic and cultural barriers. So that stood out to me too. But I don't know if it's more.
Would it be better if we just took language and cultural out and just said removing barriers?
But is it to the engagement of, it's what
right.
doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we're removing barriers to engagement.
If we took language out, we wouldn't really be the language barriers committee.
Yeah, I don't mind having language and cultural barriers. Just if we can find a different word to the engagement of parents and guardians, to the engagement. That's the part that doesn't make sense in the sentence. And maybe because I'm trying to translate it in Spanish so it can make sense in my head, and it's just not. It's not looking. I don't know.
What if we said parent guardian engagement rather than to the? It seems like it's extended to a length it doesn't need to be.
Of parent. Yeah.
Removing language barriers to parent guardian engagement.
Wait, Kurt, can you say that again?
Can you say that again? Oh, okay.
So this is just the first half. Removing language and cultural barriers to parent/guardian engagement.
Oh, okay. Okay, to parent/guardian engagement, and we can do this in a Google Doc too that we can edit. This is just in the email. Maybe that would make more sense. We can edit it together here. So let's see, what am I not needing? see.
I've also put the Board Docs link to the agenda in the chat for anyone who wants it.
I am currently on my phone. I don't have a computer available to me right now, so I'm sorry about that. Otherwise I could pull it up myself.
Okay, I'm fine to we can just edit it, but I just want to keep track of, now it's really small. Let's see what I did here. Here we go.
Just Command T.
Oh, oh my goodness. There we go. All right, so you can all see that? I hope.
Yeah.
All right, so we had said removing, do we want to keep language or switch it to linguistic, and then do we want to keep language and cultural, and then we'll switch the order of the parents and guardians? Let me just.
I like the linguistic
okay.
word instead of the language. I think it sounds more.
Linguistic and cultural barriers, and then how did you say this, Kurt? For parental.
Parental engagement. It would be parental, parent guardian engagement.
Okay.
So are we removing the barriers to the parents or for the parents?
To them.
Removing barriers
to barriers to them.
To.
Well, that's a good question.
Right. So removing linguistic and cultural barriers to parent/guardian engagement with the goal of supporting student achievement and wellness.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Right. So of student comes out. There you go.
Does that satisfy the questions that were with the two or four? Not sure.
I think two is just the normal way we say it.
Yeah.
All right, so we have removing linguistic and cultural barriers to parent-guardian engagement with the goal of supporting student achievement and wellness.
I think sounds much more better.
Okay. Do you want to add anything like in the Beloit School District, or just leave it? Is it just kind of intuitive that that's what it is?
Or a district committee.
Yeah, okay.
So do we need a motion now to approve that, or do we want more discussion?
Yeah, is there any other discussion on, does this seem like it's broad enough to because the next items are about our primary and secondary focuses, and the reason we were trying to keep this a little broad was because we wanted to be able to include all of those items. So is this going to give us enough space to work?
It's very concise and very clear, which I like. So,
Is this something that we would be able to assess growth or like somehow, see where we're at now, and then later on come back and say like we've made gains in this? Because we did start out with Tony and Tulio. You had and whoever else was involved had we had the survey of how much parents were engaging. So we have that as kind of a starting point.
Well, and I think we had discussed using that as kind of our baseline data.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and I think that aligns with this statement.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know while we had talked about like technology, often that was a barrier across language and culture that, so this is specific to our focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So then, can I have a motion? Are we ready to make a motion then to approve this as our mission statement for the Breaking Barriers Ad Hoc Committee? If so, can I have a motion for that, a first motion?
So move.
I'll move approval as this statement, to have this statement become our mission statement as written.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
All right. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. This is our new mission statement. Thank you. So the next item then is to discuss, we had said that we wanted to discuss, first of all, the most urgent barriers that we identified in previous meetings. And it might be worth, I think, doing a brainstorm, because I spent a little time over the month just kind of going back to some of those and replaying some of those earlier meetings. And there were quite a lot of barriers that we identified, but I put on here the most urgent ones, as a sense of primary barriers, and then we could, later on, we had said we wanted to have primary and secondary recommendations to propose to the board. But at this point, I think, just to keep it clear, which are the barriers that you see are the ones that would be most worth, or that would be most effective for us to address, or that seem the most urgent? Because we had mentioned things like, the board documents, technology. I don't know, maybe it would just be worth brainstorming some of those and bringing those to the table again. Even if they're not the most urgent ones, we could just bring them to the table in a discussion and then decide together which ones which ones seem to be the most urgent ones. I'm happy to take notes.
I think the most is technology.
Mm-hmm. And when you say technology, do you mean being able to use because of the virtual context that we're in, or is it more general?
I think more general, how to use it, how can they connect it, how can they get internet even. It's everything about technology, I think. It's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and Tony, I think, and Julio, some of your data, I think, back that up, because you had identified, was it, well, I think, phone is a technology. I just don't think of it that way anymore, but the most convenient way, I think, that people liked to be contacted was phone. Was that the case, or was it phone and?
Phone was first and text message was second.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people don't really know how to use it, how to communicate, or how to use Zoom, or how to use even emails, how to respond to emails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so technology is one. What about, Maria, what do you feel about the board docs? And I don't mean just, I guess, Maria and everybody, do we want to take, because that was part of the initial push for this committee, but how do we feel about that at this point?
That was something that I was thinking about. The way, I think when we were brainstorming on this, we brought up how our communication is dispersed and how do we make it more like user friendly. And I know that we talked about even the web page on how communication is being presented. I still feel that one of the goals for this committee was to translate some of the policies. And even still translating some of the communication that goes out, which they're doing a really good job on that. But maybe just the way that is dispersed might not be the most effective. So maybe triggering how communication is being provided to the parents and the students.
I would agree with that.
I went back into the survey results just to make sure that we had raised up the barriers that were communicated by the homeschool liaisons via the survey, and that the top 4 were, the first one was English, the second was too much technology, the third was their work schedules, and the fourth was needing academic support. So access to academic support for their students, or we heard last week, I think, at the outreach event that Todos Unidos facilitated the idea that, parents have the tools they need to be able to support students at home academically, or can connect their students with those resources for academic support.
Yeah, and I remember that when we had Jennifer join us during that second meeting, she brought up how she was helping her siblings. She was the student that joined us, and so I think a lot of our older Latino students might be in that position where they're helping younger siblings, and so that might also be an issue with not having enough academic support or access.
I think we'd also talked, when we talked about the technology side, about having more of the videos that were in Spanish, introducing the different resources kids are using, like Seesaw and Google Classroom, just looking back in the minutes. That could even be sent out by text, since people said they were comfortable with text. Often there'd be a link that would just go to YouTube, and we felt lots of people would have more experience with YouTube that way. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where to go with it, but I'm just noticing that was one of the major discussions we had in our notes about that issue with technology.
Yeah, okay, I have that down. So would that just be like instructional videos, Kurt, that you're thinking?
That's what we were talking about. Like, there are videos, but a lot of them are in Spanish, and not in Spanish, or in English, not in Spanish. But that knowing that even printed material can be a difficult thing if someone may not be literate themselves, but watching is often a lot more conducive. Mm-hmm. But they have one more way to differentiate. And this was in that same discussion about even the possibilities of doing more to help teachers on the other side to learn Spanish, to reduce the language barrier.
No, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
On Thursday, last week, Todos Unidos made a virtual presentation, and we record that. It's not available now on the school district's web page, and the Parents University, Todos Unidos, ESL, bilingual resources. But anyway, the topic for that presentation was distance learning, COVID-19, and the impact in the families. And we have 4 school teachers, 2 bilingual homeschool liaisons, and 1 father there. And we ask questions to, individually, and they answer their question. And again, it's with this intention to provide their resources in Spanish, especially now in the situation that we are, that everything is virtual. But anyway, we did a video. It's like an hour video, and it's a 3-session: question for the teachers, question for the parents, and question for the bilingual homeschool liaison. So it's a resource that is there. It looks, I think for me, it looks okay. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still presenting here. There we go. Sorry.
I'm done.
So, Tulio, was that a meeting? I'm not sure I understood, but was that a meeting that happened, or was it you were planning, or what did that look like?
No, we planned that through Todos Unidos.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a monthly meeting or presentation, but again, because of COVID, we had to cancel all those meetings that we have scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
But finally, we have our second one. The first one was about mental health in November, but we had a hard time recording that one. We did it through Zoom. But the one last week, we did it through the Zoom platform, and we record that. But everything was in Spanish. And yes, was planning through Todos Unidos. And the topic was distance learning, COVID-19, and the impact in the family. In the family. So there was like a panel that we have there. Repeated again, 4 teachers, 2 bilingual school liaison, and 1 parent, and somebody else also that participated. There was one of the audience and participate asking a question. So there was 1 hour planning, and now we have the recording of that meeting. And there is a good material. I was listening to that today. It's a pretty good material there.
And did you get a lot of attendance, or some at least?
I think we have about 21, 23, Tony.
Oh.
Yeah, 21 to 22 people were on the call. So, there were a handful of district staff, and then there were a good number of parents and other folks that were on the call. At least 10 folks besides district staff were in that call.
So it sounds like we do have the resources. We do have, it's like, I feel like we go around, what can we do to eliminate those barriers? But it seems like we are already doing our due diligence and trying to eliminate and provide, different resources for our parents. I think where we're lacking is, how do we get them to engage? Because you have all this material, you have all this presentation and very valuable information that you provide, but it doesn't seem that we're getting enough engagement. So what do we do to engage those parents? What are we doing? What are our efforts on trying to get the community to participate and take advantage of all those resources that we already have available? Because it's like, I kind of see that we're trying to reinvent the wheel by providing more resources, but we already have them available. So how do we get them to be dispersed? And I really like the idea that Tulio, said, well, what they're doing in recording those meetings and maybe allowing them, because it could be like time constraints, it could be, a million different things, either because the parents are working or maybe at that time they might not be available. So it's a great idea to have them recorded and have them available. But how are we letting our community know that that's available for them, that they can just go into the website and pull it out and maybe watch it? How do we get that engagement? I guess is the question.
Hadn't we talked about something like there's like Remind in the different text services where you could actually send out a text that could have a link to the video so it would go out to all parents?
So I can speak from the communication standpoint. All of this information of the meeting that Tulio discussed is going to be sent out like in Dr. Keyser's weekly letters that go out. So there's going to be a small blurb on what Todos Unidos is. It's going to talk about in the upcoming event, because I know there's another upcoming event next week on that. And then what we use to communicate with families is that Blackboard. So that's how we reach out with families, through Blackboard communications, which is the texting, the email, the phone calls.
I have a question. This is Megan. And I apologize for the child noise in the background. So just real quick, I wonder, since Maria just pointed out that there's a lot of stuff that's being put out from the district. I wonder if maybe the district could help facilitate, just like we have on our end, the home liaisons. Maybe we can find almost a district-wide, almost like a PTO. Maybe parents or guardians in the community that could partner with folks at the district who are not employed by the district, who then would be like kind of like neighborhood people that could like get the word out. Because as a school board member, I hear regularly that people feel disengaged. They feel like they don't have a seat at the table. They feel like no one is communicating with them. And I know I read all that stuff too. And yeah, I knew that all that stuff was going on too because I read the Sunday letter. But there's a disconnect somewhere. I wonder if we get like neighborhood kind of communication captains, like, or come up with like a task force of people like in the community that like would serve on like maybe on those. Oh, sorry, I'm going committee to get this information out, and I'm going to mute again. Sorry.
I like Megan's idea, and it kind of answers Maria's point about engagement, because I think we do have a lot of resources available, but there is some kind of disconnect. And I don't know if it's, you know, a cultural disconnect where it's almost like we kind of just expect people to do school the way that the dominant culture does school, but there might be some kind of mentoring or something that we also need to kind of help parents transition into, that's not just happening automatically. And the neighborhood, having more of a neighborhood task force, or, you know, that would be something. I'm not really just from what Megan said, I'm not really getting a visual for that, what that would look like, but I think it's worth digging into that piece that's missing there. But I tend to think it's cultural, in the sense that I think that in at least, and I can only say in El Salvador, but there's more of a, you know, like teachers, you know, you take care of what happens at school, and parents kind of just step back, and it's almost like seen as like a respect issue, where you're not, you know, wouldn't even say, it's more like intrusive if the parent were there all the time. And then here it's kind of, you're expecting the parents to engage all the time. And so it's just like a different, maybe a little bit of a different thing, that parents aren't used to that. But some parents have been here multiple generations, and I'm not really sure. I'm just kind of brainstorming a little bit about why that lack of engagement, how we can help to bridge that.
Well, and I know, you know, when we look at parent engagement across the district, and we look at the strength of our parent-teacher organizations at the building level, and our ability as schools and school communities to engage our families, including the Spanish-speaking families. I mean, those are structures where, you know, we each school knows its families the best. Mm-hmm. And so how do we build on that capital that those building, you know, principals and teacher groups and other support staff, our homeschool liaisons, I mean, that's really, you know, the function of those roles is to get that word out to those families. Because something that we've used in the past, Tulio and I, to engage families, you know, we talk about sending postcards and phone calls about various events, you know, but for 2 years, 2 or 3 years, we had a grupo de enfoque of parents around the district that, you know, we used as a sounding board for some of these activities to try to mejorar, you know, the program, to make the program better. And, you know, and that's the struggle that we're in terms of how do we help families balance all of their responsibilities and the things that they're doing with the amount of information and support that we're able to bring them. I think that's I mean, you know, we'll never be, you know, it's not a product that's ever truly done. You know, you're always working on those outreach efforts at the school level and definitely at the district level. It'll never be as good as we want it to be. You know, I still think that you know, when we look at all of the tools that we have to communicate with families, I still wonder, are we using all of those tools to the best of our ability with the limited opportunity right now to do face-to-face? I mean, we can't do face-to-face, you know, and So we talk about Blackboard, we talk about the websites, and I really feel like that's one of them. We talked about earlier, most urgent barriers, and I think access to information is one of the most urgent barriers. Whether families don't know where to find it or they don't know how to interpret it once they have access to it, because it's aligned with our systems, they don't understand maybe sometimes how the systems play off of one another, and I think that's where that's a big barrier. And then you layer on top of that technology right now, because we can't even get people in a room to walk them through Skyward or walk them through some of those things. So, and so I think we need to stay focused on the barriers, because that might help us figure out the best mechanisms to address them, right?
Mm-hmm. I just want to read what a comment that Megan has in the chat. Perhaps the district could reach out to churches, the LSPC, and other organizations that work with parents and guardians and see if they will actively spread our district communications.
That's a great idea. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I think some of the communication does need to come from the schools themselves, and target their own parents, within those schools. And I think the approach should be like an approach of partnership, because we come from different cultures, and like Evelyn was saying, the thought of, the teachers being, responsible in their role, and sometimes, parents not wanting to be maybe overstepping those boundaries. But I think here it's a different culture, and I think we need to provide that information that the culture that we hold here is a culture of partnership. But I think it needs to come from, the individual schools, and within those individual schools, utilize the resources that you have there, like your liaisons, to, disperse that information out, and maybe even them finding a way to create that communication, either through, the nearby churches where, people might gather, or, the different places, grocery stores or things like that, where, maybe that information can be dispersed. But covering, within their own school areas, because that's how they make connections. Parents, like for instance, if they hear it from their school and they talk to other parents within that school, that's how like information gets. And we're really Hispanic community. We're all about word of mouth. Like information travels from one person to another, and that's how like information gets dispersed. I get a bunch of different calls and texts on, Maria, do you know what's happening with the school lunches or what's happening with this? So I give that information to one parent, and then that parent like distributes it to, a bunch of others, and that's just how we work. Even asking like, if the license are having communication with parents, even just putting it in the ear. Hey, this video, it's now part in the website. If you want to tell your friends, that now this is available, so you can go and watch it and get more information about, how to do whatever, or how mental health works, or how, this. But, just put it in the ear of, the different people that they come across in contact with, of the different things that we're doing. I think when it's done that way, like word of mouth, like just like, communication through people to people, I think it has a lot more value, and it has a greater impact.
I am just thinking, having done some community organizing, what if we were just very intentional, like beginning to look at the parents, finding those we know are really the ones that are very well connected, that are kind of at the center of different groups, and organizing those folks to get the word out. A real plan, an actual plan of who are the people we know will get the word out, who has the most connections, and being very intentional in recruiting those folks to be at the center of disseminating information and bringing information back to us.
I like that idea, Kurt.
Let me add something to that. The parent focus group that Tony already mentioned, we started there with Todos Unidos, and that group was, or let's put it this way, we met once a month, and they help us with to plan the events, especially the logistic area. And, and during the event, they were there to help the families to fill it up, forms, survey, and just be there to welcome them or even to take care of the children. The idea with that group was that within the parent focus group was to develop the leadership skills, and that they will join the PTO and the local school. But that didn't work that way. There was the idea or the intention that we have with that group. And then somebody also mentioned, why, we don't start a group of Hispanic people, leaders in the local school, but or the home school. But the idea then was, somebody mentioned, we don't want to find out that they will, compete against the PTO, or that there will be another PTO in Spanish. So anyway, but I think with the ideas that you have mentioned already, I don't know if we could try to find the guidelines to start a group of Hispanic leaders in the local, in the home school, and that doesn't look like a group that will be competing with the PTO. That the mission is different, and I think with that we can probably, instead of finding those leaders and having when we need it, just probably have some kind of guidelines that they can follow, and instead one parents group, have different parent focus group, and that probably will help us to disseminate that information that we need to share with other families.
So, Tulio, are you saying that you think we should have a separate parent group for Latino parents and leaders?
Okay, let me give you the idea again, the one that we had. When we organized the parent focus group, was to support the event that Todos Unidos was doing every month, and to disseminate, communicate with other families. Even somebody in the group, one of the parents said, well, we don't create a WhatsApp group, and we create a WhatsApp group to remind us about our meetings. So I think it's a lot of potential in the parent focus group, but we need to probably create some guideline, have one that will like oversee or bring ideas to those home-based focus group. Anyway, it's just adding to what Mr. Hendricks said.
Hendrick, yep.
Yeah, Hendrick.
Well, I like the ideas that of focusing on the homeschool, because I think as opposed to like looking for churches and different things, which I think would work, but for kind of forcing ourselves to use already our schools as community centers, I think is really what we really want to be doing anyway. We want the parents to engage in the school and find community there, and so to kind of export that to the churches would be still kind of persisting in having Latino families find community elsewhere. And so I think what the ultimate goal would be to have them be able to integrate with that in the school. And so, I think I mean, it would be good. I think if we could recruit parents to join. Like, do we know, like right now, how many Latino families are participating in the PTO, or is there not Latino families in that? I don't know, but that would be ideal, is if we could just, have Latino representation, a good number of people on that committee.
I think Maria Zuniga, are you still on the call?
Yeah, I lost a signal for a few minutes, but I'm here. And you read my mind, Maria. I want to say something.
I had your mind.
Yeah, I want to say something. I don't really like the idea to make a separate PTO meetings. I think it's separating the community. I think we should work together and maybe just have a representative to remind the meetings, to remind the plans and the ideas, but at just one PTO, I don't think it's a good idea. I was on the PTO as co-president for a few years in Hackett, and I never hear about Todos Unidos and about the other Hispanic group. So I don't know how Tulio worked with that, but I didn't hear about that until the last year. Well, not this year, 2020, but the last year. So to me, it's not really good idea. But if you agree, well, it's fine, I guess.
Maria, and did you see a lot of participation from other Hispanic families on the PTO, like, in Hackett? Because Hackett has a high percentage of Latino students. Did you see more participation from Hispanic parents in the PTO?
You know what? I worked really hard for that, and I saw some people there. I started working. Nobody was there, and just me. And I started working with the parents. I started talking to them about participate with our kids' education. And they start participating. And they feel welcome when I was there, and when Megan was there, or I forgot the name. I'm sorry. Another teacher that speaks Spanish started going to the PTO, so people start feeling more comfortable, more welcoming. But well, my daughter was done in there, so I just moved on to Cunningham. And I started in Cunningham to work with the people last year. And I think people start participating there. So I don't know. That's why I said I don't like the idea to have a Latino PTO and Anglo PTO. I don't like the idea. I think it separates the community, not just community, Hispanic community.
I think that Maria touched a good point, that we need to have those Hispanic leaders, but where do we find them? Where do we find those leaders that are willing to participate and help us bring those people in through to engage? How do we engage them?
I think, like you said, Maria, each school have to work with that. Why? Because if the teachers know all parents. They know who can be a leader. They know who can help. They know who can need to push a little bit, to have a little pushing to start participating. Teachers know that all parents. So I think they should know who can help.
And I think, so this is Crystal. I think we should use us, the bilingual liaisons, more. A lot of the times when it comes to like district-wide things, we don't get involved because we say, well, that's a communication piece that should be for Maria and Monica. And sometimes we're not allowed to really, I wouldn't say allowed, but we don't always get in that when it's district-wide. But when it's within the school, at least for me, I feel a really strong connection to my families at both Merrill and Gaston. With the whole PTO, we don't have a lot of Hispanics joining our PTO at Merrill. I have found, I've had conversations with parents, and They just tell me they don't want to be in a meeting every Thursday of every week because they can't communicate. I mean, even though I'm there, we're still stopping the meeting, and that's what they don't like. Families don't like that they have to stop the whole meeting to have a translator translate every single thing. So we talked to our to our teachers, and the teachers gave us some of the Hispanic parents who are being involved and who are helping their students get online. So when I make my phone calls every week, I touch base with those parents, and whatever ideas they have, I will bring it to our PTO. So even though they're not officially joining us every Thursday, their ideas are being heard through the liaisons.
What about? I mean, if we're talking language barriers, why can't we have meetings that are more bilingual? For example, por ejemplo, having one section in Spanish, one in English, maybe someone in each who's bilingual who can then switch over to explain what each group has shared. So it isn't English is the primary, focus. Why can't we do something more like that?
Can you give
Por ejemplo, ¿por qué la reunión aquí en inglés no es en español? Now, that's all I speak of Spanish, but...
No, ahora tienes que seguirle, Kurt.
Again, I think, I believe in leadership development. An idea probably we can just provide some training, and start raising leadership within our school district community. And then I believe this is, I think that home-based school would probably take more, an active or main role in that. But at the same time, we can also provide that training that we help to develop their skills, the leadership skills. And just to clarify, when I mention parent focus group, I'm not trying to say that it's another PTO in Spanish. Yes, was a group that will help to disseminate information to the rest of the community for the district.
And I think we're ahead of where we were a year or two ago in trying to develop this at the building level, and then have those kind of key members of each school community, work at some juncture at the district level on some of these issues, just from the perspective that, and Crystal, I appreciate you contributing that, because as soon as I heard you ready to speak, I knew kind of what you were going to say, which I love, because I think there is power in our bilingual homeschool liaisons at the building level, really knowing those families and knowing who, and this goes back to Ms. Zuniga's point also about who's able to engage, who has time, to develop those relationships and share that communication at the building level, to help them feel success and a part of what's going on. I agree with Maria also that we shouldn't have separate PTOs. I think we have to find ways to facilitate that culture development within the buildings, and I think maybe that's another way, that we could, address, as a primary or secondary support. Maybe that's something that we look at the building level, or working with principals and their PTOs and their bilingual homeschool liaisons to really be explicit about connecting with those families and inviting them to, whether it's a PTO meeting or coffee with the principal, to start those discussions explicitly, to have those players at the table saying to them, my door as the principal, our door as a school is always open to you. How can we serve you? What do we need to do to remove these barriers so that you feel you can be as engaged as you want to be in this process? So that's another one. I think with our 6 bilingual homeschool liaisons, we could we could work on a plan, of developing some of that liderazgo that Tulio was talking about, amongst our parents, I think that would be a great opportunity for us and for them, honestly.
Yeah, Tony, I really just want to agree with what you said about, being explicit about inviting parents, and that idea of having just a coffee with the principal or just some effort to build relationships. And, the way I see, there's a bunch of ways this could work, but one, just how we're asked as teachers to identify, students that we see at risk, or we always are asked to identify different things. It would be easy to identify also parents that we think would be open to this kind of thing. That would just be a Google form, as pretty simple thing. Yeah.
Evelyn, I think there's some comments in the chat box.
Oh, okay.
I can't see them, but
sure, I can. So one is, let's see. So 612 from Megan. I think a separate ongoing group of parent leaders and community leaders is a great idea. 618, Megan, could we create an initiative to engage Spanish-speaking leaders connected to the community in the existing PTO structure? And Kurt, what if, for example, buildings with large numbers of Spanish speakers have English with Spanish translation in odd months and Spanish with English translation in even months for PTO, PTA meetings?
I think a lot of those are great ideas. Mm-hmm. I just want to take a moment to applaud Crystal for what she said, and having that willingness to for us to utilize their skills and their connections with the parents, because I think that that's very important. They mm-hmm. do make with the Hispanic community, you have to make that connection, and you do have to build that trust. Mm-hmm. In order for them to start joining in and being more engaged. So I really think that the homeschool liaisons are a key point, for us to be successful in breaking that communication barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Could they be at the center of this organizing of parents? They're the ones who have the most connections. The organizers for the district.
Say it again.
I wouldn't mind. I'm speaking for me. I wouldn't mind. I really do love what I do, and I feel really connected to my two schools, my families. They text me I had a parent text me last night at 9 p.m. So I feel like they're getting really comfortable that they know there's somebody at the school to come to their needs. And so I honestly, like I said, I can only speak for myself, but I'm really just proud of the team that we have as liaisons, and I know each of us do have our connections with our families, and would be more than happy to help. It's up to you guys, but I wouldn't have a problem with it.
And I could see at some point some of those families working with us to do a PSA and kind of express some of those things to the community, to help them, the rest of the community, kind of see the opportunities that are available and the support that's available. So,
do you think maybe having Todos Unidos, create some kind of event where all the school liaisons would be present, and inviting them to it, and just providing the needs of the school for that partnership with the parents, and inviting them, but having the school liaisons be there to be the ones presenting the information, mm-hmm. and be the ones inviting the parents of their specific buildings. Do you think that maybe that would bring more attention, more engagement, if they personally, are the ones making those invitations, for the different events that Todos Unidos does? I think that would be one of the greatest connections that you could make to find more engagement, with the parents, and maybe just even disseminating the information that us as a committee, we're trying to get to eliminate those barriers, but we need their help. We need their help, and we need to find ways for that team, so they can tell us what their needs are, so we can, provide the resources and the tools and maybe implement a system where we can break those barriers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's just a thought, that maybe that would be a good way to get them to engage.
And maybe can we involve our kids, and tell the kids to email them the invitation to, or tell them to remind their parents about the meeting or about the click on some link or something. I think if we involve the kids too, they will help us a lot to tell the parents, Mom, Dad, you can learn about this thing if you go to the meeting. I think if we involve the kids, maybe it'll help too.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you an experience that I had when I was running for the board. I met this wonderful lady, young girl. She was a student, a high school student. And she was so willing to, get the involvement of all the other students, and even get the involvement of the parents, and she was willing to assist. We have great leaders, like young leaders within our schools, that we can probably utilize them as well, and they can probably assist us in getting this through. I actually met her through Maria Zuniga. But yeah, she's right. We do have great young leaders in the schools that can probably even assist us, in fulfilling our mission, on getting the communication through.
And even little kids, I think, if we tell the little kids, I'm pretty sure they're gonna be like, Mom, you have a meeting now. You have a meeting tomorrow. You have a meeting, Even like the little ones can help, I think.
So what if our bilingual liaisons we're talking, next thing on the agenda is recommendations, right? What if we were to look at them as a centerpiece of organizing parents and students to, create this network of communication, what's going on and involvement within our buildings?
Can you say it again? I'm sorry. I think I'm losing signal. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm kind of working it out as I'm saying it. But so if we look at the bilingual liaison, is kind of they are hoping to organize our Spanish-speaking families, parents, children, and so they would organize within each building this group of people to help be this network of communication, of getting the word out of what's going on, and creating that kind of infrastructure or web of connections between people. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mr. Bosco, is that something that you can help organize or maybe make it part of their duties to?
I think that's definite. That, and Crystal spoke to it. It's part of, what they're working on already. It's just maybe taking it to another level. As you build that trust with those families, and those relationships become stronger, you're able to, transition to that conversation about, their interest in leadership at the building level and even at the district level. So I think the next time that we have a bilingual homeschool liaison meeting, Tulio generally runs those, but I definitely think on the next agenda we could, put some ideas for how to kind of pinpoint some, or start with at least one Spanish-speaking, parent per building that would start as, a member of Grupo de Enfoque or something to, begin that process with. I think that would be an easy agenda item for that team. And as strong as those relationships are becoming, I think, over time, I think that could grow to many more than just one per building. So, yes, absolutely. That'll be on the next agenda for the next meeting.
And there are really good leaders in high school. There are a Latino club, I think, and some of the kids they really want to do something, but they cannot find a good leader that show them what to do or how to do it, But I think they can help. They just need someone, someone to trust, someone to tell them what to do, how to do it. But I think they really can help.
So I'm just thinking about what you're sharing, and Evelyn, we've been talking about doing some organizing of if you just have people who begin to listen to what others are saying, finding out what are the common issues. Like we had the survey, but if you get that talking word of mouth, if you're hearing from more and more people, this is an issue that's something that they can organize on and begin to, raise up, as we hear from people what needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as far as extending the data set that we have, Kurt, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, but also at the same time, you're building relationships. Like if you're developing these connections with parents and then they are connecting with other people and building more relationships and listening and hearing,
right.
It's not just a survey, then you're actually having this network of people,
Yep.
And
there's a process then to raise that stuff that's not just a survey, right? You understand the systems at the building level. So that in Mizunega, I've seen plenty of times when there's a concern at the building level, you have the capacity, you understand the system so that you can bring it to bear so that it can be addressed. So that we don't expect any of our, stakeholder groups to suffer in silence. We need these issues to come to bear so that we can address them. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So where are we on the our next steps for bilingual homeschool liaisons are to have a discussion about how to develop a list by building of who those leaders would be, those parents who are, have the capacity, the time, the energy to be engaged at the building level, and then kind of meshing with Tulio's, vision for Grupo de Enfoque. How do we bring that group to really become the critical mass to start, getting that word out that we've been talking about the resources and the supports and the opportunities that are available. So I think that's a great mechanism that we can start to develop through the homeschool liaisons.
And then do we want that to mesh El Grupo de Enfoque to be eventually the same, to find a group of parents that would join the PTO, or do we want, that was a little ambiguous for me about how we want that to mesh with the PTO. Do we have
I think we need to encourage that, but I think there's, we don't want that to be a condition though either.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I think it's more about engaging that communication structure at the building level and building that network at the building level. And then over time, maybe those networks will intersect, right, and grow up to the district level. I think that's kind of what we're after.
Yeah.
So if I may, I'm just thinking about that example, that this group could both encourage people to be involved in PTO when they find out that they have that interest, but they could also be a focal point of bringing up the self-interest of Spanish-speaking people, saying, hey, we need to have more ways of including people. So it could function in multiple ways.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we went on a, I don't want to leave anything out, but are there other barriers? So this is a great one. We've kind of almost started proposing going to the next step, which is proposing a recommendation, but are there any other barriers that you wanted to bring forward before we go on to the next point? So we had mentioned just kind of went over professional development for teachers, but is that something that you wanted to say more, because there's a lot of different ways that could look? Do you want to? With teachers' language or trainings for teachers, or for example, what would that look like, in your opinion? I guess I'm asking, like, what barrier do you see with teachers and, yeah.
Well, the district just, the board approved the RFP for Cameo, I believe, Cambio, to do some work with the district at the district level and with buildings around equity. And I think this is another example of an opportunity for growth as we work with them and you know, really look at developing our you know, equity approaches to all groups in the district. I think, you know, there will be some things that will be raised through that process for the Latinx Spanish-speaking community, as well as other communities in the school district. And I think through that, PD, professional learning, other opportunities will come to bear for staff as that continues to take shape. And then to the last point, as far as, you know, opportunities for staff to learn Spanish or develop their Spanish skills a little bit, make them a little stronger. We actually just had an email from a principal today. We've had a meeting with Beloit College about, you know, opportunities for some summer Spanish for teachers opportunities that we have had in the past in the district, you know, opportunities to get a district license for Rosetta Stone for staff that are interested in, you know, trying to build their Spanish capacity. You know, so I think there is a need district-wide for staff to you know, have opportunities to develop their cultural proficiency, you know, to serve all of our groups. So that's definitely something that we will continue to focus on. We've done work and are continuing to do work with Mark Parrott, Community Action, and we have other speakers that are going to be coming in over the course of the year. But to center on some of the issues affecting the Latinx community in Beloit is something that I'm sure that Cambio will be a part of helping us shed light on.
One other thing that came to mind as you were talking about the language opportunities, Tony, is I was thinking, you know, we have a lot of, you know, even teachers like in Spanish class, for example, we have a lot of students who are like in Spanish 1. I have a ton of students who are heritage speakers that are taking Spanish 1. And so a lot of, you know, even in cases like that where it's not language that's a barrier, it's like kind of the system that we have in place. I know you have the dual language program that's making its way into the high schools, but one thing that I know a lot of teachers want to do is have like the ELL certificate. And so we were a lot of, you know, we looked into, there's a program right now with CISA 2 where teachers could get certified in ELL. It's like an add-on certificate, but there was it was very expensive. It was like minimum of $5,000 if you got a cohort of teachers. And so some of us started investigating, like, is there another pathway for teachers to get the ELL certification? And actually there is. You probably knew about this, but I didn't know that you could just take the study with a cohort of teachers or just study alone, or we were thinking of doing it with a cohort of teachers and then just taking the praxis test. And then you can just get an ELL license. And so I don't know if, you know, because informally, I know there are teachers considering studying together as a cohort to do, to get the ELL certification, to be able to get to the level where they can just take the praxis test to have that certification. But I don't know if there's some, you know, anything that we could do as a school to kind of at least even just communicate that out to teachers or to find out officially what pathways are, because I think it's not just language, but knowing how, like, because I have no language barrier with my students, but knowing how to meet their needs in a Spanish 1 class it's almost like a different curriculum. And we do have some heritage classes, but I feel like, you know, in other areas, there still is, it still would be helpful to know, you know, like, have that background in how to teach English, you know, how to have.
Sure.
You know?
We have a group of ESL teachers who have been trained in sheltered instruction observation protocol, which is similar to comprehensible input in terms of, you know, some best practice strategy for second language learners, second language acquisition. And through our PD cycles coming up, we just had a meeting about professional development in January and February today, and those opportunities, and we did offer the opportunities in August as well, for core teachers to take PSYOP training to help learn some of those strategies to use in their, math classrooms or science classrooms. So that is something that we have developed the capacity to do and will continue to build over time. Then as far as the ESL add-on cohort, that's what you were referring to as license based on equivalency or a portfolio-based licensure process where, based on teacher standards and the amount of time that you would be working in, researching and learning, developing your capacity within those standards, and then, the district, becoming a kind of a licensing agency or signing off that the portfolio meets DPR requirements for that license in addition to the testing requirements that you talked about as far as praxis. That I know that Human Resources sent out a survey probably a month or 6 weeks ago to gauge interest in, some of those other opportunities. If there are staff that are interested in ESL as an add-on, bilingual as an add-on, those kinds of things. So I know that Human Resources are working on some of those opportunities as well. So that's in the works also.
Okay.
So I think, B and C on our agenda, barriers and recommendations kind of have to go back and forth almost to take each of our barriers and what recommendation we came. But did I not hear that we're looking at some recommendations on encouraging supportive teachers learning Spanish, of getting their ESL certification, of those things we're looking at, for recommendations?
Well, I don't know. It was just a I don't know if we want to make it as a priority or a secondary thing, but there were other, other things like, for example, the mentorship program that we talked about for students, and a few other things. So I think we almost, instead of rushing because there was the third point today was the discussion of primary and secondary support recommendations to propose to the Board of Education. I almost feel like we should shelve that for the actual recommendations for the next meeting, because it seems like today we're almost at the end of our meeting and we're just still kind of putting barriers together. And what we would still, I think, need to do to be fair to all the discussion we've had is winnow and sift through this and then pick out which are the urgent barriers, because there's so much that we've talked and kind of phrase them in a way that's useful so that, Tony, you can take that back and move with it, and so we can all kind of know what we're doing. But I don't know if you all agree with that. Do we want to try to shelve that third agenda item, which would be proposing making a recommendation to the board?
I think could we move that forward to the next meeting, but in the interim, maybe a smaller team of us get together to start so that we had more of a working list for those. I don't just a suggestion, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say a working list, you mean a team of people kind of put everything we've said into a list of, like, can you unpack that a little more?
The most urgent barriers, and then start on those primary and secondary remedies.
Okay.
So that we'd have a place to start at that next meeting.
Okay.
And then in the interim, people could also be, kind of thinking about any additional barriers that may come up, or, kind of do their own T-chart as far as primary, secondary.
Great.
Can I bring up, I guess, one other possible barrier is, I think about a conversation from tonight, like I earlier about people going to PTO and not always feeling like they want to have the whole, rigmarole of the translation waiting, and thinking about the discussion we just had too about teachers. And I guess to me, there's like two thoughts of, are we just like translating things so that people who speak Spanish have those same resources, but, we're centered in English, which obviously is, primary language, in the United States, but aren't we also talking about, the whole celebration of diversity we have in the district. Of are we looking at ways of saying, hey, we want to have it going both ways? You know what I mean? That it's not just, hey, we have the resources so someone can translate. We really want actually to encourage more and more teachers to speak Spanish. Are we? Do you know what I'm saying? Is our focus on just making sure that you have a resource to help you if you speak Spanish, but English is the primary focus? Or are we saying, hey, we really want to have more like the whole dual language of that we would want to be like, in essence, a dual language district, that our focus is that both are embraced, you know, and celebrated. So we're trying to go both ways. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kurt, and I think it goes back to you kind of pushing back on at the idea of why necessarily do our overall meetings or PTO meetings have to be all in English, and then and I think that's an interesting question because I think I think as a Latina, I can say there's always a sense of like you have a double consciousness that you just kind of expect all the time, which is like, I'll tell everybody my name is Evelyn, but to Latino I'll say Evelyn, and it's kind of like you just become accustomed to this double sense of who you are, and you're so used to translating and interpreting that we just kind of accept that. But ideally, I think it would be, almost like the ideal thing would be to flow between languages and just to, present yourself without the translation, aspect of it, and I think, but I'm just not sure. I mean, that would be ideal, to kind of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that, and Tulio can attest to this, and I've done, all kinds of interpreting in the district. Right. And the idea is a great starting point. We would, it would require a ton of kind of professional learning and structural kind of considerations for us to get to that point, which I think is a fabulous goal. Mm-hmm. Because I think that is ultimately when you're able to Evelyn's point, insert yourself and you're not sure if it's an English or a Spanish meeting, right? That's kind of what we're aspired to. But I think there are a lot of structures that, and that's another one of, I could see that being a, working with the bilingual homeschool liaisons about, and it's artificial in this context because they haven't been to a PTO meeting, a live one yet, and maybe not even a virtual one, so their ability to kind of visualize what that would look like contextually, right, in a PTO meeting with a group of English-speaking and Spanish-speaking parents. I think there's beauty in that because I think they're capable of helping us develop those systems and structures. But that's something that, we'll add that to our next agenda, also to start talking about those structures and, okay, how do you work with your principals, and your PTO presidents or your PTO groups to facilitate that with the idea that, initially there'll be some discomfort and there'll be some growing pains, but ultimately we're trying to develop that real sense of community like Maria talked about earlier.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I see that we are we're at 6:52, so I think we it was a valuable point that Tony brought up before, where it might be useful to, in order to keep moving forward, to have a group of people or a pair at least, or 3 people to consolidate, kind of what the barriers are that we've discussed today, and what are, to try to identify some of the most urgent ones, or even the more addressable ones at this point where we are, and then to start identifying some things that we can talk about in the next meeting as far as primary and secondary, potential primary and just potential recommendations that we can make to the board, and then we can kind of together decide if we want to make those primary or secondary. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if there is anybody that would be willing to do that work.
It was Mr. Bosco's idea.
I was just about to nominate Tulio, Maria. You beat me to it. All right. I'll still nominate Tulio, so we're up to 2. So.
Could it be a working document that we all have access?
Oh, I like that idea.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's a good idea, Maria. You have a revelation.
All right, Maria Acevedo's 3.
Yeah, I love that idea.
That will let us all kind of be able to ruminate or meditate on, over time on this.
So I would say by the end of the week we could have a starting document shared for anybody on the committee to really add comment to.
Mm-hmm.
So Tulio, Maria, and I. Was there anybody else? Tulio, Maria, Tony. Maybe Crystal. Are you still there, Crystal?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. We could have a get together and kind of look at those, the second agenda item and the third agenda item, and get at least a base, share that out, and then people can add, comment, whatever. We can have that ready, I think, by the end of the week, don't you think?
Yeah, that's wonderful. And then we would just have like the categories of like just, basically just barriers, and then potential recommendations, and then people just add to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful approach. Thank you, Maria. That's a great idea. And thanks everybody for volunteering.
Maria,
Tony,
no
thank you.
Sangre ni carne.
All right. So then the other thing that we would need to do then is to make a motion. I think we need to make a motion to move the last agenda item which was the discussion of primary, secondary support recommendations, to propose to the Board of Education to table that and move that to our next meeting, since that was our 2 business action item part C. So is there somebody who would be okay with making a motion? Wait. Is there somebody who would, I think, make a motion to move that forward to the next meeting?
I'll make a motion to move 2C to our next ad hoc language barrier committee meeting.
Great. And anyone to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. And then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. And so our big focus will be to find some record, to kind of review the barriers and make recommendations then at our next meeting. So I think that brings us to our meeting closing, and I think we agreed last time at the future meeting dates. Does anyone have that handy, just so we can kind of?
It's on the board doc agenda, but it says that our next meeting is January 4th, 2021, okay. And we were looking at that first Monday of each month. I know we had talked about that last time.
Okay. Okay, so that would be at 5:30, the January 4th. So I guess I'm not
want to know if that's the first day back after the winter break. So I don't know how people feel about that. And for you and I, Evelyn, that would mean that we have to post during the break, which is fine with me. Mm-hmm. If you send me the email, I can get it posted. But I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, because I don't know what the first day back after break is going to be like for people, mm-hmm. Working and teaching and whatnot. So
mm-hmm. We'll be well rested.
Me, I'm here. But
right.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah, let's roll.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay. All righty. So then Michelle, do we need to approve that, or did we already approve that then?
No, you don't have to approve that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you guys had just talked about having the meetings on the first Monday of each month, and the reason I put in there announce and confirm was just because of it being the first day back after break. So basically, you're just announcing that that is the next meeting date. So
all right, great. So then our next meeting right now is January 4th, the first Monday at 5:30, and then the future agenda items I think we've discussed pretty well. It's basically to kind of to bring forward the items that we'll be adding to that document. and then to finalize what we see as, the most urgent barriers, and then to make recommendations to the board. Is there anything else that we want to add to that? I think that would be a full meeting anyway, but.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So then, let's see. Then I think it's time, I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there anybody to second that?
You're the only one that I second.
Okay, all right. So all in favor of adjourning today's meeting?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All right, anybody opposed? All right, wonderful. Then we are done for today, and I will
Take
see
care,
you
all.
online on that document.
Okay.
Great meeting.
Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Bye.